Hello, this is Sam Simon, also known as Dementia Man, for the week of May 13th. And we're entering the Parents' Day weeks. Day is actually Mother's Day, and not too long it's going to be Father's Day. Maybe we should have Ancestors Day. But what has provoked me to do in this context is think about the role of my ancestors in my current situation as a man diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. You may be aware of the history of Alzheimer's. I'll be quick. It's actually a Dr. Alzheimer's who, in the early 1900s, had a patient. She had what they called dementia. And after she passed away, he did an autopsy and saw, among other things, black tangles in her brain. And for many, many years, people who had cognitive impairment or various names for people who were viewed like insane or crazy or demented, I hate that word, were followed, and they often had autopsies. And if they had these tangles and plaques in their brain, they were considered to have had Alzheimer's. That is no longer true. It is possible to diagnose Alzheimer's um, through PET scans and knowing whether or not there are amyloid plaques and black tangles in the brain. Plaques are a protein that become excessive and a variant of that, which can lead to cognitive decline. There are tau proteins that form in the brain, triggered in part by the amyloid plaques, and they look like black worms in the brain. And all that can be seen through PET scans and MRIs, sometimes with contrast, that is some sort of liquid that has radioactive properties in your arms. And in 2021, I was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. Now, I was exhibiting cognitive decline. I was having problems. And that's what triggered me to go try to get help. But also something else played a factor in that. As I was beginning to have incidents, things that made me wonder whether I had a mental or cognitive issue, I did one of the 23andMe tests, and in that test it said that I had one instance of an APOE4 gene that meant, in fact, I went back and looked at it today. At the time I got the report, it said I had a small increase in the likelihood of uh, getting Alzheimer's if I had one instance of APOE4. I think what I want to say today, as I set the stage here, is today in 2024, it is really, really important for people to be aware of their risk profile and to be seen early by a neurologist, good neurologist. We'll talk about that at another time, to see if they actually have the disease. There is a counter narrative. I know that you probably heard me talk about it before, that people say, I don't want to know. There's no cure. Why should I know? It'll just make me anxious. Well, the truth is today there are treatments and behavioral activities and things that can be done to slow down the rate of the disease, to figure out how to minimize the risk and live as a meaningful life as possible with the disease. And indeed, that is my goal with my work, to create a vision of people living with Alzheimer's, meaningful lives for as long as possible, and maybe even find, this is going to sound funny, joy in life with the disease. And that's possible. But let me go back, and first and foremost, my point today is please take a look into your genetic backgrounds and your other lifestyle events and get tested. And if you have high risks, There are a lot of resources available from the Alzheimer's Association, from um, the dementia friendly world. There are programs and assisted living centers. There's just a ton of information and new activities, things like working actively and keeping engaged in life and not curling up and hiding. And as frustrating as your symptoms might one day become, embracing those and learning how to leverage that, find something new and different. Sound crazy? I'm crazy. I have Alzheimer's. Okay. Let's start with two. I'm going to focus on two risk factors. One is the APOE4 genetic gene. It's a variation of an APO gene. The gene, if it's a two, means you're very healthy. If you're three, you're average, and four means you're at a higher risk of contracting Alzheimer's disease specifically. The New York Times featured a brand new study just a few weeks ago, too. So the various genes that we have come from various sides of our family. And the more complex our family history, but we each have a parent and they each have a family. So we're talking about our birth parents' families. And it turns out that I have one instance of that APOE4 gene. Now, what does that mean? As of today, and this is changing, it means I am at about a 10 to 15% higher risk of contracting dementia or Alzheimer's as a person without it. How did I find out I had an instance of APOE4? Well, something I took a very early 23andMe test, and 23andMe tested for it, and they still do it. Most of the other genetic tests do it, but if you can't do 23andMe, I know that our hospital here, our nonprofit hospital, Inova Fairfax, will do genetic testing for you at no cost, and they'll then give you a counselor. So talk to your doctor, talk to large hospitals near you, and get a test for that'll tell you your APOE status. Now I'm going to come back to what to do. The other risk factor I found out just today, I researched it again, is smoking. Now I was a heavy smoker. I was born into a family where my dad was a chain smoker, my mom was a chain smoker, my oldest sister smoked. In fact, all of my sisters, except my younger one, were smokers. So I grew up in a house full of secondhand smoke and not small amounts. What's a chain smoker? Someone who can smoke 25 to 50 to maybe even 75 cigarettes a day. That's what, 3 packs? I think it's 20 to 25 cigarettes in a pack. It used to be. I ended up starting to smoke at 14 years old. It was what the grown-ups did. I snuck into the bathroom of our house. I had stole or picked cigarettes out of my parents' packs. They wouldn't notice 2 or 3 cigarettes missing. And I would go and I would smoke. And I started inhaling. Now, it didn't take me too long. Now, by the time I'm 16 years old, we're on a very long trip. I've been smoking secretly, right? Well, at least I thought it was secret. And I was addicted by this point. And we were taking a very long trip, car trip, the whole family, to visit my now oldest sister, who, when I was 16, had already graduated college and was living in Washington, D.C. Maybe a half a day into that trip, I wanted to smoke so badly. And so everybody else in the car was smoking. So I pulled out a cigarette. And we had this long discussion. And I remember my parents saying, well, if we're smoking, how can we say he can't? And so I began smoking in front of my parents at 16. Now, cigarettes were about 10 cents a pack back then, maybe 5 cents. It wasn't that hard to get a hold of them. And I became a public chain smoker. And It was the hardest thing I ever did was to stop smoking. In fact, I ended up with cluster vascular headaches. I'll let you look that up. And couldn't stop those headaches without stopping smoking. That was in 1978. I have no doubt that my smoking, the higher risk, put me in that higher risk still today, that I smoke so many cigarettes. And now I'm paying the cost. And it increased my risk. Just today, it said what? Almost 1.7%. So I've been at a high risk for a cognitive disease, and I have it. I have Alzheimer's disease. Nothing I ever would want, and nothing I'm going to kill myself over. There are so many aspects of this disease and in this moment in my life. I'm lucky, first of all. I'm 78 and three quarters. I'm going to be 79 in July, and I have the best wife. Happy Mother's Day to her too today. Though she's not my mother. I wrote her a poem. Maybe I'll put it up one day about how she has been to me as a mother of my children. A brief note about that. I, was a very busy professional man most of my life. I went to work at 7 in the morning, didn't come back to 7, 8 at night. I ended up working for Ralph Nader, and he always expected us to work all the time. This was pre-computers. And, I was a workaholic. And my wife, Susan, raised our two amazing children, Marcus Simon and Rachel Laura Simon. One's a doctor and one's well, I say doctor, pediatric dentist. The other is a lawyer and a legislator. I'm going to let you guess. Hey, what? You can send me an email at sam@dementiaman.com and tell me which one you think is the doctor and which one's the lawyer. At any rate, my point today, I get distracted, is to encourage everybody who hopefully follows this. Hopefully you can see the play soon, and they're working on the book version of this. Get yourself tested. Don't smoke. Maybe do it this order. Don't smoke. If you are, stop. Don't smoke. If you are, stop. It is dangerous. It is bad for your health and it's bad for everybody around you. And it increases your risk significantly. In fact, the point I was going to make to begin with, see, I forget sometimes, that there's a new study out that says that people with two instances of the APOE4 gene, that is one from either side of your family, I only have one, so I am at higher risk. Their argument is that if you have two instances of that gene, you in effect have Alzheimer's disease, that the conditions in your mind and in your body have set, and you should go ahead and treat yourself and be treated as if you have Alzheimer's disease. There are some drugs now that will slow the disease. There's some controversy about whether and when one should take it, but if this report is correct, you have two instances, then it might be wise for you to begin taking some medication that slow the progress of this disease. And that could be at any age, my friends. Be proactive. So stop smoking. Find out your genetic status. If you have an APOE4 genetic risk, if you only have one, then you're at a higher risk, but you aren't considered as to have the disease. In either case, I hope you'll be motivated. See my play, learn about it, get treated, go into doing puzzles, mental activity, physical activity are all things we can do to make ourselves healthier and also make ourselves mentally healthier, cognitively better. But with the Alzheimer's disease and having two instances of the APOE4, you might be able to start on a drug that slow the factors that cause Alzheimer's. They are this amyloid plaques. I am amyloid positive. And the other is the tau tangle, the tau protein tangles. So the good news is that you can do something about it. You can minimize, lower the risk, increase your opportunity to live a fuller life, even if you do begin to have symptoms. So on my Mother's Day, Family's Day, beginning this period of Mother's Days, Grandparents' Days, but the Father's Days, realize that what you are comes from them. Your genetic makeup, which you didn't cause, came to you through your parents and their history, may mean that you have a risk for Alzheimer's. It may mean, even based on this new report, you actually have it now. So do something about it. Get checked up by a neurologist, your doctor, do the genetic testing, and then begin to implement a program to increase your general health and your cognitive awareness. So that's my thoughts on this Mother's Day, and I'll probably repeat it on Father's Day if I can remember. And wishing everyone, blessed memories of your parents and of your, particularly today, your mother. It's in my play. My mother was a flamenco dancer as a kid. She was born in Pensacola, Florida, but ended up in her first year in New Orleans, Louisiana. She was a Southern lady. I didn't even recognize that until one day I met her best friend, Molly Cancher. My mom were meeting. They were in their 60s, maybe 70s. My mom would have been in the late 60s, sitting on a couch in our home. And my mom had long, black, straight hair, very slender woman. But her best friend from New Orleans as they grew up, Molly, was this rotund, beautiful, bright white hair woman with a deep Southern accent. And I said, oh my God, there's my mother. She's a Southern woman at heart. And she was. So I'm thinking fondly, her name was Frida Simon, my mom. I'm thinking of all the moms. I'm so lucky to have had a woman in my life for 57 3/4 years, Susan, who has been the mother to our children who have turned out to be exceptional children. And my message, though, is remember your parents left you their genetic traits, and find out if you have these risks and do something now, today, to be around, and so you can be a great parent, grandparent, cousin, whatever. So again, happy Mother's Day, happy Parents' Day. Get tested.